Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talk About It Tuesday. I'm so excited for you to meet Jai Vargas, who's going to talk to us about creating options and opportunities. This is going to be a pretty incredible episode, and here she is now. Before I bring you on, Jai, I just want to let the audience know my name is Tosca Di Matteo, and I'm the founder of Tosca Coaching and Consulting. And I have this platform as a way to bring different voices, perspectives, and experience to the table in the pursuit of self-development, healing, and living your best life. And Jai is definitely on board with helping other people live their best life too. So that's why I'm really excited to have her on. So without any further ado, here we go. Hello.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. Look at you with your pretty collar behind you. I love it. I love it. Yes. Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, let me just say thank you so much for taking the time to come on this show. I know that you have a lot of things going on in your life and you do so much, but I'm so excited for my audience to get to know you, to hear your nuggets of wisdom, which I know will be plentiful. And so I'm just honored that I've gotten to know you a bit and we've gotten to partner in different ways. And I'm just thrilled for this conversation.
I'm excited. Thank you for having me. I love your Talk About It Tuesdays. So I can't wait to hear all about what you're creating on this platform and how I can share a little bit of what I've learned so far.
Yeah, a little bit. No, I know you're gonna be dropping knowledge. Like y'all, for those of you who are watching now or or after the fact, grab your pen and paper. You're gonna need one. I have no doubt. But yeah, thank you. So listen, one of the things that I like to do is just have you introduce yourself and like share what you feel compelled to share about where you come from and like who you are and like what drives you. Um, because I know I'm not going to do the intro justice. Uh-oh, and we have a technical difficulty here, but guys, hold on, because we'll get Jai right back here. And we're not even in Mercury retrograde, so I'm not sure what's going on. But maybe just a little connection. I don't know. I don't know. This is
We're
how we
back.
roll.
We're
We're,
back.
hey, everybody stayed with us. So I don't know if you heard, but I was just kind of inviting you to share your story, and I just also want to say thank you to everyone who's joining now. And Karen, I see you, girl. So yeah, so over to you, Jai.
Thank you, Tosca. So for everyone who doesn't know me, my name is Jai Vargas. I am a immigrant. I'm a Latina. I identify as Latinx because of all of the work that I've done in the LGBTQAI plus community. I grew up in Washington Heights, New York City. So if you haven't seen the film In the Heights, please do. You'll learn so much about my people, my food, my culture, my community, my language. It's a wonderful film. What else can I say? I actually grew up in New York City and moved over to New Jersey for some time. And then because of COVID, I actually live in the Poconos, Pennsylvania, which is absolutely beautiful here. However, like every other city, there are its pros and cons. And so I do miss the energy of the city, being around tons of people all the time, because that's what energizes me. So currently, I do strategic engagements and initiatives at the Hispanic Association on Corporate Responsibility. It's a nonprofit organization. It's been around for 35 years, and it's headquartered out of Washington, D.C. As you all know, I'm also founder of the Latinista, which is a network of Latina professionals and women of color, and really anyone that wants to join so that they can learn new skill sets to further their careers. So whether it's technology, how to invest in the stock market, how to be a more confident public speaker, how to engage with other people naturally, and how to stay authentic to your culture, to how you grew up when you enter corporate America. That's all you're here about at the Latinista workshops. And it's interesting, because of COVID, we've actually been able to expand quite extensively because you get access to so many more people. You know, the workshops that we were hosting across the country really limits us to the places in which we have chapters in. New York City, Miami, Chicago, Los Angeles, and San Diego. And depending on the weather, really forced us to be able to say, are people going to show up or not? And now that all of our programs are virtual, we have women joining from Utah and Switzerland and Sweden and Denmark and Mexico City. So it's pretty incredible. So it's one of those like silver lining moments where you're like, whoa, this really pushed us to create a new avenue that we knew we always needed. But, you know, like everything else, you're like, it's really hard to do all of that online. But we did it, and it worked out really well. Yeah. So
amazing. Yeah. Oh my gosh. First of all, like I know an hour this is going to be tough. This is going to be tough. So I'm just going to try to pull out what I think is just really special to me. And one of the things you talked about is how do you bring your culture to work? I'd love for you to talk more about that and your experiences with, have you always felt like you were able to do that? Is that something you struggled with? Like, let's dive in there if you'd be so willing.
Yeah, so what's interesting about that is I actually studied advertising and marketing communications. But really early on, when I was in college, I had a career counselor ask me, you know, Jai, what makes you so different from everyone else that's graduating literally with the same degree in advertising and marketing communications? And at that time, you know, 20 years ago, the only thing that I can think of that was unique to me was the fact that I spoke Spanish. Yeah, it was New York City, but I was really the only one in my class that could speak Spanish at my level. And I'm not talking about like executive professional Spanish. You know, I pretty much grew up in New York City, and I was born in Dominican Republic, but came here when I was 3. And so I used my language skills to my advantage. I was able to take that culture and that language and maintain that through all of the careers and positions that I held. And so my first corporate job was really my dream job. I was working at Mercedes-Benz headquarters. I absolutely love cars. I grew up with my dad bringing me to the New York Auto Show. And so every role that I did had an emphasis on using my language and my culture and my community. Back then, 20 years ago, it was multicultural marketing strategy. We now know it as a diversity, equity, and inclusion industry and field. But every single one of my roles, I was raising my hands and saying, I am the Hispanic market expert, right? And it takes time to be a subject matter expert. But I was really the only one raising my hand in those roles and saying, I'm living in this community. I speak that language. Use me to get insights and knowledge to build your products, your programs, and your services. And so I did that at Mercedes-Benz, you know, with a client at Pfizer, MTV, the Latino Commission on AIDS, which I still work with today. And then at a PR agency, at the US Open tennis, doing that. And then New York Life Insurance for 9 years. It was always with an emphasis of me being Latina and of the Hispanic and Latino community. So I was always using my authentic community and background and language to my advantage. But it's also interesting because in corporate America, a lot of people see that as you being a token, right? Oh, they're just using you so that they can look like they're being more diverse. And to me, it was always my personal responsibility to be able to say, well, who else is going to do this? I can't share my personal truth and my needs in a corporation through someone else. I'm going to take this on and make sure that, yeah, that CEO sees me as whatever you think, the token, but I'm going to use that to my advantage and say, yep, whenever you need a Latina or diverse perspective, or you want to invest in a program, I'm there to take all of that money and to be able to respect my community and build out programs and services for those people that need it at this corporation. I will take that title and I'll move mountains with it. And so there are two different types of people, you know, in corporate America. Those that say, I don't want to be labeled. I don't want to be seen as the token Latina. I just want to assimilate, work here, get about my job. One day I'll get promoted. It doesn't matter if I speak Spanish. Let me just do my job. And then there's the other type, me, where I'm like, oh, I'm a super Latina. Give me all of the money and the support and the programs that you want to give me, and I will triple it. And I'll make sure that all of my people come along with me. And so, you know, some people think it's not my responsibility to do that. And I always said, oh, that's totally mine.
Yeah, and so really owning it, and it's true for you, right? Like you're not doing it out of resentment, you're doing it because it's like, no, I'm gonna take these opportunities and pay it forward. You know, it's what I'm really hearing. You're using it in service of you and others. And Karen is wondering, do you feel that others put you in a box because of your language skills? And I think just to build on that, right? Like, do you have there been struggles with owning this? Have you hit roadblocks? Has it been difficult to own all of you and to show up as all of you?
It's an interesting question. So the question is, do you feel like others put you in a box because of your language skills? For me, no, because that's always been the box that I bring to the table, sort of say. I've always touted the diverse perspective, Hispanic and Latino community subject matter expert. I've always led with that as a value add. And so, you know, but it's also a level of my privilege having been here in the United States for so many years. There is a very different mindset if someone just immigrated to this country and perhaps haven't been able to yet leverage their skill sets on both sides of the coin, speaking English and Spanish. And so there is a level of privilege in how I grew up in corporate America, but it's the way that I use that to my advantage to take advantage of those programs and services by saying, I do everything in English and I can do it in Spanish and also in Portuguese, right? That's a value add that I bring to the table. I get a lot of questions from people in the Latino corporate America space and say, Jai, I have a really thick accent. Should I go to accent reduction classes so that I can be seen as more professional or so that I can succeed in this corporate workforce? And I always ask people, do you hear someone with an Australian or a British accent saying the same thing? Not too much, right? And so it's our own perspective as well as the biases we've seen and heard from other people about our Spanish accents, which is challenging. And I'm not going to take away from that experience, but it takes a certain amount of time to be able to be more comfortable articulating your message and also understanding your unique way of delivering your content and making sure that when you communicate with individuals, your message comes across as clear and concise, right? I always tell people it's so important for you to get a public speaking coach. 10 years ago, I met one of my best friends. Her name is Minue Yoshida. She is one of my most dearest best friends. I met her because when we were working in corporate America together, she recorded me. And once I viewed that video back when I was speaking in front of 100 people, I was mortified as to what I saw when I was delivering a message that I was actually really confident in delivering. But I didn't look confident because I was hiding behind a podium. I was holding a bunch of papers. I was fiddling with my hair. I had my coffee cup always in front of me. I was playing with my heel. There are some aspects of our body language that we inadvertently use to hide our uncomfortableness. But I was super confident in everything that I knew. I didn't recognize it until I saw that video. And then she started coaching me. So she'd been my public speaking coach for 8 years. And I learned so much from her on what to do and what not to do. And so important for women, anyone, really to say, if I want to get better at communicating, and I know that I can't do it alone, go get a coach. I have a confident public speaking coach. I have a gravitas coach. I have a financial coach. There are so many people, just like the work that you do, Tosca. So many of our Latinistas use your services as a career and life coach, right? When you know that something isn't working for you, you need to ask for help, because nothing's going to change if nothing changes, right? That sounds really t-shirt-esque.
No, yeah, totally. We're gonna make some t-shirts. Nothing changes if nothing changes. Yeah, and you know what this gets at, well, there's a couple things there. And I know that you feel very passionate about women and anybody investing in themselves,
Yeah.
right? And that's what you did when you got these coaches, and I'm sure that you weren't necessarily in the greatest financial position when you made those choices. So talk to us about how do you get over the hump of financial investment in yourself when you feel like you don't have it, and what do you think that people need to know to give themselves the permission to do it so they can get to the next level? And I mean level of vibration, level in career, level in life, you know?
Yeah. I mean, everyone knows that it's so important to invest in our professional development, taking an online course, getting on YouTube, listening to a podcast, joining IG Lives, understanding new concepts about cloud computing and affiliate marketing and sales strategy and strategic thinking, cultural intelligence, emotional intelligence. You don't have to invest a lot of time, energy, or money to better yourself when it comes to your professional development. But when you do want to make an investment, you have to be very careful with who you're investing your money in. Don't get impressed by people's followers and views, right? What you do need to understand is, what has this individual accomplished? Let me look at their LinkedIn page. I want to interview them and ask them the right questions. Because if I'm in a specific trajectory and I want to see myself as a chief marketing officer, why would I ever take advice from someone who's never been a chief marketing officer, right? There are certain aspects of investing in your professional development and questions that you should ask yourself. And if you can't get to an individual like that for 5 or 10 minutes, they have IG Lives and webinars and podcasts that you can start learning from, right? So that you can position yourself for the next best step in your career development. It's so important that when you do decide to spend money, you're smart about it, right? And all of these conferences that I see people joining, I'm like, you can connect with all of these panelists on your own. You don't have to spend $1,000 going to that conference, listening to conversation, and you never met that person, right? You have to be a little bit smarter when you do want to learn and absorb from that individual.
Yeah. So what I hear so much, what you're saying is understand your strategy, understand your financial resources, understand what's important to you and what you really connect with versus like what your head is saying, I should connect with this because of all the, conditioning that we get these days. And I know that like when we talk about, right, because the title of this is kind of creating options and opportunities. And so in terms of the financial understanding of your situation, like what are your thoughts about that as it relates to options and opportunities? Because I think what happens a lot of times is that people have a scarcity mindset when it comes to financial. And I know there's like there's a reality, and that, like, I'm not denying that, right? And some people have more privilege in terms of finances. And on top of all this, I think there's just mindsets and perceptions about possibilities. So what advice do you have around how people can get closer to their financial understanding so that they can open doors of opportunities?
I think, and I'm a big, big, big advocate for Latina Equal Pay Day, which actually occurred 2 weeks ago. So for those of you watching that aren't aware, it's not something we celebrate, but we recognize. It's a really bad situation that Latina professionals are in, and many women. But Latinas are the very last ones to be able to achieve pay equity. We won't in this lifetime. They say it's going to take about 230 years for Latinas to reach pay equity. So what that means is a Latina professional has to work all of last year, right, 2020, up until October 21st of this year to make what a white non-Hispanic man made just last year. So when he only works 12 months to make that 50,000, we have to work 22 months to make that 50,000. And it's because of a number of reasons. Because as Latinas, as immigrants, as traditionally humble beginnings and perspectives, we aren't taught to talk about money at the dinner table. We also think it's very taboo to ask women how much they're making. And it shouldn't impact us at all, right? So if you're a data scientist at one company, you should be able to be comfortable enough to ask another Latina professional that's a data scientist at a different company, right? How would that impact her or damage anything that she's creating for her? Not at all, not one bit, right? You do have to ask these questions because you don't ever want to be left behind. And it happens so much. The first thing that I did, so, I've been in corporate America for 15 years. I actually connected with a really good friend of mine, Maria Brunette. She's wonderful. She was the one that actually introduced me to an organization that does financial coaching. The number one thing that you have to be aware of first is that you need to speak to someone who can help you understand what's happening with your money, how much you're making, how much you're spending, what's your credit score, and what are your goals for the future. Maria is on Boricuas Hoy. I love it. It's so important for you to understand maybe your financial goals are to go to brunch every Sunday and travel. Maybe your financial goals are to buy an apartment one day or pay off your student loans. Everyone's is different. It's so important for you to understand this because that's what's going to help you get there. So for example, I was making a really good amount of money working on Wall Street and financial services, but I didn't know how to invest in the stock market. I didn't know what my 401k was doing. I didn't know what my brokerage account was doing. I had tons of insurance and financial products. I just couldn't articulate what they were doing for me. And so I sat down with financial organization and they showed me what I was making, what I was spending, and what I could be doing differently to achieve my goals, which is to move to Barcelona one year, maybe buy some property, get a puppy, and travel whenever the heck I want to, right? And never depend on any organization to pay me a salary. And once I understood my money habits, I was then able to make some really short-term changes, like not spending $200 a month on coffee every month, which sounds, like not a big of a deal, but it compounds over time, right? I had a bit of a shopping addiction. Every single week, almost every day, I would go to the store and just buy a new dress because I live in New York City and I go to like 3 galas a week before the pandemic. And I was just obsessed with wearing new clothes. But once I understood how much I was spending on these little habits that I had accumulated, and once I said, I don't need coffee away, I can make some at home. I don't need to be buying new dresses every single day. Wow, I'm actually spending like $2,500 a month. I mean, a quarter on these things that I didn't even realize because nobody had ever asked me to stop or to consider something different. And once I did that, I then said, oh my God, this is incredible. That little sacrifice that I made allowed me to then open up a brokerage account, and then my money started to really make a difference for me in the long term. And so it's really understanding to be honest about your finances and to sit down with literally anyone who knows a little bit more about money than you do and say, look at all of my stuff. What can I be doing differently? Right? It drives me crazy when I sit down with my Latinistas and they tell me that they're paying interest on their credit cards and they have money sitting in the bank. I'm like, do you understand what you're doing? I'll lend you the money. Never pay interest on a credit card. Oh my, never open up another credit card, please, until you understand the financial capacity of those loans. Oh my goodness. It's so much that works against us that compounds over time that we don't realize.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that, someone here is one of our guests here is sharing about finding out about that pay gap. And that can be so disheartening and so frustrating. And what I hear you say too is like, know your habits, right? It's like, know your habits and have uncomfortable conversations, because we have to get out of the taboo of not talking about financial stuff, of not being embarrassed, of not like worrying about, knowing like this is actually going to serve us to have open and honest dialogue about what's going on.
And you said it correctly. It's an uncomfortable conversation, but when we really think about it, what is uncomfortable about it? If I'm asking a Latinista professional that I just met that has my similar role in another company, and I'm like, hey, I'm making 80,000. How much are you making? How does that impact or affect any of us, right? What is she going to do with that information? All I'm going to do with it is be able to say, oh, wow, I'm actually a bit behind. Maybe I need to upgrade my skill sets. Maybe I need to change companies. Maybe I need to look at my money situation a little bit more. Hey, maybe I can go work with her. Right?
Yeah.
The only thing that may be uncomfortable is if you ask like your immediate coworker. But even then, I did that. And I found a $40,000 gap. And she's my friend, and we were working together literally in the same role at the same company. And when I asked her what she was making, I was like, why? How come you didn't ask for more? And she was like, this is what they offered me. This is what I took. I was like, oh, you got to go. Because there's no way they're going to give you $40,000 for this to be worth your time. You got to go.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about that. And actually, I was just listening to a podcast today, about quitting, right? About how there's so much negative connotation around quitting or leaving a job. I also believe, anecdotally, in my experience with the Latina community, is that people stay way longer than they should.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of factors driving that. But it just breaks my heart, because it's like, the minute we stay somewhere more than like a year or two, we're not making market rate, right? Like, you're never going to, like, those 2% raises, it's not going to do it. You're never going to, like you said, make up that $40,000. You got to leave and go get, but it's scary. It's scary to leave. And I know that you have your own experiences with leaving. And so I'd love to dive into, how do you know when it's time to leave? What should you be looking at? And also, one of our guests here is saying, hey, it's been said we should have 5 streams of earning power, but how? And not one from a main salary source. So, I'd love to hear your thoughts about, when do you leave? How do you think differently about what's possible for your revenue streams and all that good stuff?
Yeah, I mean, most of us know when it's time to leave because of the toxic workplace, because we are severely underpaid when it comes to our colleagues around us, or when we're simply not happy. There is a very unique privilege in getting the opportunity to be able to leave. You have to have at least 6 months to a year's worth of living expenses in the bank to be able to leave. Because honestly, I work with a lot of people that would like to leave, but they don't have the privilege and the opportunity to be able to live out of their savings for 6 months to a year's worth of that time.
Mm-hmm.
So what you have to do, and I love that question about having 5 different streams of income, that is so important that you start understanding how you start developing those. When I was working with this financial organization that helped me understand my money, they asked me, Jai, you need to, okay, you've got your salary, but if you want to leave the corporate workforce, and for me, it was really important because I wanted to leave and not ever have to depend on coming back to corporate America. I had 2 years worth of living expenses in the bank once I decided to leave. But I had to make a lot of sacrifices. And when they asked me to start creating other streams of income, I was like, I'm not getting on Etsy. Like, I'm not a creative person. I have no idea.
Start making bracelets. Yeah. No.
Yeah, definitely not. I wish I had those talents and skills, but it just was never in me. And so when people would say that, I was like, I have no idea. One of the easiest ways to understand how you can monetize your skill sets is to be able to say to yourself and ask yourself, what comes easy to me that I can teach someone and be able to translate what I do easily and I'm passionate about to start making some passive income. And a lot of those things you have within you. So for example, if it's easy for you to communicate and you can get on top of a stage and command that stage, perhaps you can be, that catalyst for someone and teach them how to sit on a panel discussion, how to prepare their headshot, their bio, their LinkedIn profile, their resume, studying the questions, and how to set up their unique workspace so that they can be more confident when they do have to speak on a panel discussion. If that comes easy to you, there are like multiple opportunities that you can charge for right there, right? Perhaps you can create a course online or even just one video online. Think about some of those unique skill sets. And I mentioned some of those. Some of you are really good writers. You can be a ghostwriter, right? There are so many people that are creating content or blogs or articles on LinkedIn. If writing comes easy to you, start sharing and promoting that service. You're like, hey, Jai, you seem like you have a lot to say about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Could I write your articles? I'm not a good writer, right? Vicky Ayala, who's helped me so much in my branding and marketing strategy, she writes a lot of my content, right? That's not me. You have to be willing to understand where your core passions and skill sets are, and then figure out how to monetize what comes so easily to you, right? So writing resumes, LinkedIn profiles, teaching people how to be articulate and communicate their messages on a panel, writing their bio, getting them prepared, figuring out how to get them a great headshot, figuring out how to create their press kit, their proposals, how to develop their messaging for LinkedIn. There's like a million things.
It goes on, and I love what you're saying around, and I, with my clients too, it's a process of getting out of looking at your job description as helping you understand, or even your resume, helping you understand your superpowers. You have to really take a step back and you have to say, what am I good at? And something that comes up for me that I was thinking about even before we started our conversation is, look, if I want to learn about resilience, I go talk to people of color. I go talk to Latinas. I go talk to African American women. I go talk to them because resilience is just embedded, culturally and also experience-wise. And so what can you do? It's even in terms of resilience, And I think that you're right. Like the most obvious things I find that people just dismiss because, oh, it comes easy. Whatever, that's not special. Yes, it is special. And that's what you should charge for because other people, right, doesn't come naturally. So, and I'm curious for you in your journey, Jai, like, has it always been easy and obvious? Because look, you have so much wisdom that you carry in these realms of really looking at things differently and looking at opportunities. But was it always easy for you?
No, when I left corporate America, I have an incredible community. I have a very large network. When I left corporate America, I was like, oh, this is going to be easy. I know everyone. I mean, I've got connections and people, movers and shakers. When I started my business, Jai Diversity Consulting, it was like crickets. I started creating my proposals, reaching out. I have an Excel sheet that I literally wrote down every single person and organization that I sent my proposal to. I was at like 342 in a number of 6 months, and nothing was happening. And I was like, what in the world am I doing wrong?
Mm.
And people always ask me, what changed to go from sending out my proposal like almost 370 times and not getting any bites or opportunities to then all of a sudden it was just blowing up. I like to talk about really tangible things. I never like to talk to people about like, oh, it was just my mindset or like the energy. No, let's get real. I started reaching out to my mentors, my champions, and my sponsors, and I sat down with them and I said, look, this is the business that I built. Here's my proposal. Here's how I'm pitching it. This is what my email looks like. What am I missing? If you received this, can you give me some advice? How come people aren't hiring me? And they in return said, oh, first of all, we didn't know you were doing this. Second of all, now that we had a conversation, I understand how you're pulling this all together, and you're missing this, this, and that from the proposal. And I was like, oh my God, okay, right? Little tweaks here and there, right? My proposal went through like 16 different iterations until I figured out exactly what was going to be the sales rate, right? And what was going to be the turnkey proposal that I sent. And my strategy in which I was doing was now like, I can send out like 10 proposals and 9 of them would come back and say yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. And also thank you, Tiffany, for sharing some resource here for financial literacy and support. Yeah, and I think that what I'm pulling from that, right, is like we can't do it alone, right? If we operate in a vacuum, and there's a difference between taking unsolicited advice from people that you don't respect and saying, who can I trust? Because it's vulnerable. It's vulnerable to share what you're doing and to share like I'm not achieving what I want to achieve yet. Help me. And I know that's such a big part of you creating the Latinista and creating support and community. And I know that's one of the big tenets for you, which is like find your community, build a community. So like, what do you want people to know about that?
There's so much that I want them to know. We should never be ashamed or embarrassed about what we don't yet know. I work with a lot of people who are, I'm almost 40 years old. I work with a lot of people who are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s even, that confide in me and say, I feel so embarrassed. I can't believe I didn't know this. I'm so behind. Look, it's never too late. Most of us still have like 30 years to be able to figure this out. We have 30 or 20 more working years to be able to figure this out. It's so important to surround yourself with people who are going to give you that constructive feedback. I have seen so many proposals from women, from Latinas, where I can tell them instantly what's missing, what's wrong, why you're pitching the wrong way, and how come your prices aren't on here, right? And there's another way that you should never speak on a panel. If you're a subject matter expert, you deserve to be paid. And when I say subject matter expert, like literally a 12-year-old could be a subject matter expert on TikTok, right? If you can answer 9 or 8 out of 10 questions on your expertise, you're a subject matter expert. If someone invites you to be part of a panel discussion, you should always charge for your time. And I've seen it time and time and time again. I charge for everything. I referred a friend of mine to speak on a panel that I was moderating for a company. Once we were done, I was like, hey girl, that was awesome. By the way, how much did they pay you? And she was like, pay me? They didn't pay me. I thought I was just doing this because you referred me and, you know, the organization is great and maybe somebody would see me and then hire me later. I was like, I'm sorry. You didn't charge them to be on this path? Why? And she was like, I didn't know I could. And I was like, oh my goodness, right? And it's challenging because when you start off in your speaking journey, in your paid speaking journey, there is a sense of, I've got to pay my dues. And I totally believe in that. But paying your dues looks like this. All right, I'm going to speak on that panel. I'm going to practice. I'm going to learn what types of questions I'm comfortable and uncomfortable speaking about. I'm going to figure out what my expertise and my focus topics are. And then once I get really good and comfortable at this, now I know I'm going to start to charge, right? But if you say, sure, I'll do this and I won't charge, these organizations and companies are always going to look for the Latina or the woman of color or the person who's not charging. So you have to set a precedent to be able to say, no, yeah, I charge $2,000 to be on this panel. Oh, can you refer someone who doesn't charge? No, I can't.
Yes.
Because I respect the women in my community. They're subject matter experts. You can go find a volunteer or like someone who just got out of college. But no, I'm not going to send you a friend of mine who doesn't deserve to be paid. Are you crazy? And it's just, it drives me crazy.
Well, yeah, I mean, I hear you because what you're talking about is a revolution. What you're talking about is changing the game. What you're talking about is the status quo of how we've been treated in terms of worth and in terms of how companies set budgets, right? And what they think they can get away with and what they have been getting away with. Like, you know, what you're saying is, no, you have to think about your value and you have to ask for it. And you also have to know what you get out of it, right? Because if you're early on, right, like maybe you need some practice, maybe like having some ground for that would be great, you know, or what else can you negotiate on, you know? Maybe it's, I want those email addresses from the thing I'm doing, or maybe it's, you know, all kinds of things where you can get the value and feel good about it and not resentful that here you are putting all this time into something and you're not getting crap.
You hit it right on the head. You know, when you do these panel discussions or opportunities, you realize how much energy and work it actually takes. Physical energy, emotional energy, preparation, practicing. You know, when you're on this prep conversation, tech call, the actual call, draining yourself afterwards, you're like, man, that was a lot of work. What did I get out of it? Nothing. You've got to be very understanding in what you are going to get out of it. And if you do want to take up an opportunity where they can't pay you and you're like, all right, fine, they have no budget, but people in the audience are the ones that are my ideal clients, what I'm going to ask this organization to do is take professional pictures and headshots of me when I am speaking. And I want those pictures tomorrow. I also want them to interview me for their internal newsletter or their podcast. I also want them to post about me and tag me on LinkedIn, right? I'm not going to speak about what I'm doing on this panel for this organization. I want them to post about me and tag me. That's going to be in the contract that you send them. Okay, fine, you can't pay me. These are all the things that I need. Can you do that? Great, then I'll do it for free, right? There's so many opportunities where you can get return on investment. You always have to make sure that the people in the audience, when you do take up those free opportunities, can hire you for something. I used to be asked to speak at a lot of high schools and colleges, you know, and yes, I do like to give back. I love talking about my story, but when I'm busy, I really can't because those kids can't hire me, right? The school has to pay me. One of my highest paying clients is a local college paid me $8,000 to come and speak for students. Most people would be like, oh, colleges and local universities, they don't have money. Yeah, they do. They always have money.
Yeah.
You just
They
have to
got money.
fix
It's
the
just
loopholes. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I love it. Like I know you guys, are you taking notes? And look, for everybody watching live here, if you have any questions, by all means, like clearly, Jai, I'm like, all right, sign me up for some coaching. I'm taking notes. Like, I gotta do some things differently here. Um, but also, you've gone in and out of corporate, right, and entrepreneurship, and you've like traversed all these different waters, and I think it's so inspiring. I'd love to hear a little bit about that journey for you, like how easy or difficult has it been to navigate that, and what do you want people to know? Because the thing is that I find it so fascinating, that actually the Latina community, like entrepreneurship is in the veins. And some of that is like you were saying because of the pay discrepancy, right? It's like a necessity. I think also again there's just like this lineage of innovation and just grit and tenacity. Um, and I just I just want to hear more about that journey for you and what counsel you have for people who are wondering, do I go and try and create this revenue stream outside of my corporate job, but oh my gosh, I'm putting all my money and my time and energy over here. Like, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I mean, it was very, very difficult at times. I mean, so many bumps in the road, especially when I was at, I'm very transparent. I will literally tell everyone anything because that's all we can do in this world is really just share everything that we've been through and all of the mistakes that we've made. When I was working at the US Open, I had an awful, awful boss. And I was depressed, extremely anxious, but I couldn't quit because of my responsibilities. I was recently engaged. I bought a home. I had a mortgage. I couldn't quit. I didn't have any money in the bank. And I was totally miserable. And at that moment, I said to myself, I have to be able to figure out how I can develop multiple income streams so that I never again have to depend on just being forced to sit at a desk like this and be spoken to like this and have to go through these damaging and traumatic situations that I'm going through in corporate America, right? And so you do something differently. You seek people out, mentors, and it's really necessary for you to just be very transparent and open to your friends and your family and people that can help. And it's just an opportunity for us, especially now that it's November. It's an opportunity for us to pause, really think about what we need to do differently to wrap up the year, and then what's going to make us happy next year, and who we're going to align ourselves with that are going to help us move forward in our financial goals, right? And so I can't stress it enough. Sit down next to someone and just say, I don't know what a 401k is. I think I have one. Who should I call? Let me open up my platform. What does this mean? Right? There are so many organizations, and someone even dropped it into the chat box, that are helping people in general understand their money and their goals. I get a lot of questions from women and people in general that say, I have no idea what I'm good at. I went to school for accounting or marketing, and that's what I've been doing, but I don't love it. I mean, it pays the bills, but I have no idea what I'm good at. I have no idea what I'm passionate about. I have no idea what else I could promote or apply for. I don't know what my skill sets are. And it's all about just being plugged in to different communities and then figuring out who inspires you, right? Maybe you meet somebody at a conference or a webinar that you're like, oh my God, that person was so good. Wow, whatever they do, I want to do that. That seems really cool. Or I'm good at numbers. I can do somebody's QuickBooks. I have someone who manages all of my accounting, all of my QuickBooks, all of my invoicing, all of my W-9s, right? It's so important to be able to say, oh, I know math. I can figure out QuickBooks in 30 minutes. Great. Charge for that. I pay a lot of money for the person that does my QuickBooks, right? What comes easily to you that you can say, oh, wow, I didn't know I didn't know people needed this. Yes, we need all of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. And, what I'm hearing you say is on this, again, coming back to, we're talking about creating options and opportunities, is really diving in and understanding yourself and your superpowers and really honor what lights you up, and to hold space for, even like, you don't know what's possible, right? Like, I imagine for you, Jai, that there was a time where you're like, I don't know what I'm going to do next, whether that's in your personal life and going through relationship, roller coaster rides, or whether it's career. And sometimes we don't see the path, you know? Um, and what has been helpful for you to do that deep exploration of, like, what do you bring to the table, and then making choices, because you have so many skill sets too. And then I think for some people it's also like, I don't even know what to do. I'm interested in and can do lots of things. So how do I decide? And that can be paralyzing for some people, and they just don't move forward.
Yeah, that's true. I do hear the opposite from people, right? I have no idea what I'm passionate about or what I'm good at. And some people are like, I'm good at so many things. And I started a cupcake business. I also teach Zumba. I also have a spin studio. I also work in corporate. I do X, Y, and Z. I'm all over the place. What you should focus on is what makes you the happiest and what makes you the most money. Because at the end of the day, we need money so that we can create options. If you have options, you can do all of these other things. And so it's so important to start laying the foundation of, what am I really good at? Write those things down. When I was totally lost, I used a wall, right? And a bunch of Post-its. I was like, what am I good at? What am I awful at? What am I selling? Who's my ideal client? Who are my friends? Who are my mentors? What questions should I be asking? Who inspires me? What kind of money do I need to be making? Where do I want to live? What type of relationship do I want to have? Right? When I went through my divorce, I was traumatized. I had 5 different therapists that I went through until I found the one that really helped me. Because of COVID and many other reasons, it's so important to take a break and realize you probably need therapy for everything that we've been through. There are so many of my friends and my community and my colleagues that are in denial. And I flat out tell my friend, girl, you need to get a therapist. And they're like, oh, I tried it once. It's not for me. They don't really understand what I'm going through. I don't need it. What would I speak to them about? I'm like, oh, you want to know? This, and that. You have issues with X, Y, and Z. In case you don't know, I'm telling you. Because sometimes we're so, we want to guard our relationships and we don't want to offend anyone, but it's the way that you deliver that information. It's because I love you that I know you need to sit down with someone, because you're doing this to yourself. You're setting up these toxic relationships. This isn't going well for you. You have self-esteem issues. You shouldn't be in that relationship. Do you need me to write it? I will go with you. And some people aren't sharing that information with their friends or their family members, and it's just hurting them even more.
Yeah.
It's so important. I have no shame. I'm like, girl, let's sit down.
Yeah, I'm just so grateful that you're sharing this, and it's certainly messages that I share also with this community, which is like, there is no shame in getting help. There's so much healing, especially with communities that have experience in being intentionally ignored, of having traumatic things happen, and I think that, talking about it, like you said, like this is the way to healing. Like, this is the way to living our best life. This is the way to finding our truth, right? Is moving through the things that have been really difficult. And I think that there's so much opportunity in that alone. And there are resources. And it also makes me wonder what your perspective is on allies and co-conspirators to the Latina community and other communities of color and BIPOC and LGBTQ. Like what do you wish more white people or people in privileged situations or people that have the knowledge, like what do you wish that they were doing, and what is your call to action for that?
Yeah, I speak a lot about allyship and active allyship in the corporate workplace because I've been doing a lot of work around diversity, equity, inclusion, equality, and belonging. It's so important that as allies, we don't just put on a pin or a hat and we show up to the march. It's so important to join all of these conversations so that we can hear from these individuals what they're going through and what they've been through. It's why I speak a lot about my experiences as an immigrant, as a Latina, growing up in corporate America, and everything that I went to that was so traumatic and shocking and just depressing about the bosses and the managers and the toxic workplaces that I worked in, because I never, ever want someone else to go through this. And so as I share my stories with allies and whoever is listening and can help, hopefully they'll be able to say, wow, I had no idea that you and someone else could be going through this. What can I do to help? And so for allies that are wondering what they can do, number one, if you're an ally and you're asked to speak on a panel discussion and you look to your left and you look to your right and you realize, whoa, all these guys look just like me. Your responsibility and opportunity in that moment is to raise your hand and be like, hey, yeah, thanks for inviting me to be part of this panel. But I'm going to reach out to some underrepresented voices here so that their perspective and experiences can be shared. Because I'm not going to continue to perpetuate this type of panel. Also, whenever there's a new program or mentorship or development, workshop starting at your organization, and that historically speaking, only the high performers and achievers and people in finance are the ones that are picked out for this program, it's your responsibility to grab that application, reach out and send it to some of those underrepresented voices to be able to say, hey, Maria, there's this incredible program being launched, and I know that you would benefit from this. Yeah, these other people are always in it. I'm going to go out of my way, reach out to you and make sure that you apply, because this is going to help you so much. You have to do it. I will sponsor you. And I'm going to tell the person that runs that program. And then third, for those of you that work at organizations that have employee resource groups or business resource groups, join those other groups. I used to run, programming for Latino resource groups, for women's resource groups, the LGBTQ ally groups. It's so important that you don't just join the group that you're part of. Like, oh, I'm at this company, I'm Latina, so I guess I'm going to join the Latina group. No, you need to join all of the groups, because the only way that you're going to be able to advocate alongside of individuals that are being discriminated against in the workforce, that have different disabilities, that are veterans, or that are part of the LGBTQAI plus community, that are women of color, that are Latinas or Black or AAPI or Native American. The only way that you're going to be able to advocate alongside of them is if you understand their stories and experiences. You're not here to be a hero or speak up on behalf of someone. You're there to learn, understand, be part of that conversation. And then the next time an opportunity for a big group meeting comes up, you're able to say, oh, hey, by the way, I know the CEO is speaking. Can we hire an American Sign Language interpreter? Because my coworker is deaf and she needs to download a third-party app on her phone just to be included in these conversations. Did you guys know that? We need an American Sign Language interpreter when the CEO is speaking, right? And people are like, oh, shoot, we had no idea. Well, yeah, I'm here to tell you.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
No, I'm just like feeling the fire and the passion and the energy, and I am just like yes, and I'm just looking at it like yes, people, open the damn door. Open the door for people behind you. Open the door for people that don't have the same privilege, that haven't gotten into the same spaces that you are able to get into, and break the damn thing down, right? Get uncomfortable having the conversation to say, where are the people of color on this panel? Like, why aren't we paying these people?
Yeah.
Right, and I think that's the responsibility of everybody to say we got to change things. That's why I'm calling it a corporate culture revolution, because we cannot keep doing what we've been doing. It's not working, and I am going to wait 200 freaking years for the Latina community to be making as much as their white male counterparts. It's bullshit.
Exactly.
So, and the other thing, I know we're out of time here, and I want to respect your time. The one thing I do want to bring up before I hand it over to you to see what final thoughts you want to share, which is, and I have the book over here, but when you talk about therapy, when you talk about really understanding what's happening, there's a book called You Are Your Best Thing, and it's a number of different stories about shame and vulnerability written by people of color and those in intentionally ignored communities. And it's edited by Brene Brown and Tarana Burke. And so for those of you who are just like maybe need to see yourself in some of the struggle and like honor that you've been through some things that probably would benefit from some healing and from some exposure and conversation. It's just a book that I think would be super helpful, especially to communities of color. But I feel, oh my God, we need like a workshop. We need we need more time. But I'm so blessed and honored that you've come and you spent your time with me, because in full transparency, I haven't paid you. And it's funny because I'm like, I need to like start doing that in some kind of way of token to say, I do appreciate your time. I'm in such gratitude for that.
No,
And
I appreciate you inviting me to this platform and just being able to share some of this knowledge and insight, and sharing my mistakes that I've made along the way, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to get ahead, is just sharing with everyone. Hey, I've been there, I've done that, and here's what I learned. Here's what you can do differently so that you can get ahead, right? It's not too late for me or for you. Let's just help each other.
yeah. Yeah, 100%. That's all we can do. That's all we can do is shine our light and help others in the journey. And we actually end up helping ourselves when we do that too. Um, so, in closing, I would ask, what is it that you want to leave with people? Like, if they take away one thing from this, like, what are you hoping that the audience here now and who watches it afterwards takes away?
I would say, if you're ever in the position to help someone with your words, with your prayer, with your money, please do so. It's November, it's Thanksgiving. We're about to launch a major campaign so that we can give back to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. I don't partner with them. They probably don't even know who I am. But I always make it a point to say, because they have invited me to their hospital. I went down to Memphis and I saw those children and those families. It changes you forever when you see what those families and children are going through. I made a personal commitment to myself that with any program or community that I ever interacted with or launched, that I was going to make it my personal responsibility to give back to this organization until I die. I only spend time, energy, and money on the Latino Commission on AIDS, which I've been doing for the last 15 years, and St. Jude's Children's Research Hospital in the last 4 years. And so whenever I can use my platform, my community, my contacts, my connections, you will get a message from me. I will harass the heck out of you because I know that those families need it. And so please, if you get that link, we are going to be trying to raise $2,500 so that those families and those children don't ever have to worry about paying a dime to walk into that hospital to take care of their cancer and their health. That is the only thing that I want you to take away. If you can help someone with your money, your words, your wisdom, your prayer, please do so, because maybe you won't have the opportunity to do so tomorrow or next week.
Hmm. Well, Jai, you are a light, you are an activist, you are a beacon of hope, you are courageous and giving and generous. And again, I'm honored to have been able to spend this time with you and with all of our guests. And I love that message, uh, give, give and do something. Be the change, do the change, be a change maker, however big or small you have the ability to do so. What a beautiful note to end on.
And thank you, Tosca, for inviting me, for creating this consistent community. And I'm going to send you all of the communications and referrals and women in the world so that they can continue to learn from you, because you've done an incredible job with our Latinistas and helping them figure out what their next best career move is to position themselves for success. If success means moving to Barcelona and never having to work more than 3 days, or just getting a job where people respect you. You've been able to do so much of that work with our Latinistas, and I thank you. So this is a barter. This is a barter system that we've got going on here.
Well, thank you. I'm honored to serve the community, and I look forward to finding new and different ways of doing it with you and the Latinista. So, yeah, this is not goodbye. This is to be continued, and just wishing you a very abundant November.
Thank you. Bye,
Thank you
everyone.
so much. Bye. Ciao for now, everyone.